What is the underlying function of entanglement?
Oh, okay. You wanted me to answer?
I guess I'll start. Sure. So, I mean, when we think about entanglement, that's where I think you have to have a medium. If you have one thing happening over here and super, super far away, we have another thing happening as an equivalent. Like I move to the right here, I get equivalent movement. There must be a connection between those 2 points. So I'm not sure if the camera can see this, but we could imagine that our 3-dimensional reality is actually a 2-dimensional reality, and we're living on top of this table. And we can't see up. We can only see left or right. But we know there's more to our reality. We because we're higher dimensional beings, we can see that there's more to this space that's all around us. So what's entanglement then? Entanglement is just me taking my hand and putting 2 points between this 2-dimensional space. We now can see there is a connection between these 2 points. But if I'm living on the surface, I can't see that. I can only see the physical manifestation in front of me.
So it's if there is a particle that's entangled, you could imagine it like we see this one electron here, miles and miles away there's an electron here. When we apply a charge here, we see the same effect on both sides, but it's actually, in a higher dimension, they're actually connected.
And so this is where I wanted to talk to you, because I remember before I even wanted, the reason why I wanted to talk to you originally over a year ago is because you were talking about you've seen faster than light communication or quantum communication systems. And
I've not seen them.
But
I've spoken with people who work in government who say that, well, I'll say this too. They were like, this is confidential. You can't repeat this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been 3 or 4 years, so I'm repeating it now. But they said it's actually, I mean, come on, let's be real. We know about entanglement. This is mainstream science. This is not any kind of weird stuff. You go to any university, they'll talk about entanglement. Obviously, big corporations are trying to figure out how to instantaneously send data. You need only send 2 bits, just yes or no, over this entanglement to be able to transmit data. And then to upgrade your speed and data transmission, you just need more entanglement. Naturally, once a university says, oh, hey, entanglement, we can do it, any billionaire is going to be like, I need this. And so they've probably been researching and investing in this for decades.
Yeah, no, they've figured it out. And if you pull up, I had some slides that I presented for the Cosmic Summit last week. Slide number 25 talks about quantum entanglement and non-locality. This is one of the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. They're called the DIRDs. These were classified papers that were released around 2017. They were some of the most popular scientific papers on the Pentagon's private servers ever. This one is written by John Kramer. He's an experimental nuclear physicist out of University of Washington. And he explains exactly how they do what you just said, because we know quantum entanglement exists. What they say, though, is that there's no way to manipulate or transfer information, because if I were to try to measure the movement of the one electron, entangled electron, it breaks the coherence down. Coherence falls apart. So we can't just say, okay, I'm going to move this one to the right, and then this one will go to the right. We can't do it. It's not that simple. But they figured out a way to get around that problem. With entanglement, these EPR experiments, they call them, they're Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen experiments. They're basically like double slit experiments. What they do is they shoot one electron, or one particle goes this way, and we're going to just see what that does. That's our base. We send the other one down a different path, and this is where we manipulate the second path. We can change the distance of the path. What they did was they set up a switch. They basically say, okay, we're going to send this down this path, and we're going to have like a train track. We're going to say, you either go A or you go to B. And if you go this way, on the double slit experiment, you get the 2 slits. And if you go the left way, you don't get the 2 slits, you get the wave pattern. And so now what this means is if I'm looking at the right, I either see the wave pattern or I see the double slits. And you can see
that's your yes or no.
That's a yes or no. That's your yes or no. And it only takes a few photons for them to be able to tell exactly what pattern it is. And so so the amount of time it would take like a computer to be able to tell which shape it's showing you is like a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
So now you've created binary. And so now you can just flip your switch off or on, and as long as you have a 2-way communication system, like walkie-talkie type stuff, you can send a communication, and now it doesn't matter the distance.
That is the core function of all computers.
Yep.
Just a whole bunch of yes and no.
Yep. And so what this would allow you to do is it's not going to potentially allow retrocausal communication, like you're not potentially going to be able to transmit to the past, although more to come, but it would allow you to like control the Mars rover on Earth in real time, which we would consider to be impossible because it's super far away. But you could do that. Or for the gamers out there, no lag. The quantum internet, which is coming, will have no lag. You'll be able to play against those kids in South Korea, and it'll be all real time.
And then what happens when they can Neuralink you?
Yeah, well, that's a whole
real time, lag-free universes, interplanetary. It's like that show Altered Carbon,
yeah,
where they don't actually travel from planet to planet because that would take too long. In the show, they established colonies on other planets that took hundreds of years to do and set up faster than light communications. And if you want to go from Earth to, say, Mars, you don't get on a rocket. You network your consciousness into a new body, and it transmits faster than light your consciousness into a new body on that planet. So you're there.
Okay, I wanted to give a physics explanation of this entanglement. Okay, I want to bring the audience on. Okay, so whenever we say two particles, normally just like you said, electrons, right? Spin up, spin down. You find out that whenever you do experiment, right? You always spin up and spin down two electrons or photons, exactly opposite, and then to generate. Why one has to spin up, one spin down? They are magnets. Magnetic locking. They are created the same thing, the neutral and send it out. So I try to say you can have called entanglement, so magnetic locking without invoking extra dimension.
Oh, really?
Magnetic force itself locked them there. And Ashton said is very important. A lot of experiment claim we discovered this now one. When you use instrument to measure them, you break the coherence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the unwind of the conference. We find out a lot of measurements actually is because of the measurement equipment altered their orientation. So
And what
saying,
go ahead.
magnetic locking would be sort of like a phaptic coupling, where you get two electrons 100 billion light years apart are locked together. It looks like entanglement, but it's actually through the localized magnetic field of the galactic.
One thing, they have to generate it simultaneously, this particle, and then send it, spread it to billions of light years away. So in order, we're talking about called quantum entanglement. You are not generate two quantum particles a distance away. No, that's not the case. We are talking about simultaneously generate twin photons or twin electrons. Now they started with opposite pole attract, right? They started locked. Now you send it far away. And they said, now you change when the other one will change. But a lot of measurement is due to, change is due to error of measurement equipment will alter their orientation.
Yeah, measuring things is like poking and prodding them.
Exactly. Influence, the measurement equipment process influence the behavior.
I may be wrong on this, but I think they're trying to get around that too. I think they call it coincidence something or other. So the idea is that right now with entanglement, we have to produce it right on demand. So you shoot it out of the laser and they're entangled from the point where they're created. But the next step would be, can I just produce entanglement from two existing things that are already out there?
So they try to do that now?
That's what I'm pretty sure they're doing. And I think they're doing it through Bose-Einstein condensates, which is basically cymatics using frequency to manipulate matter. And they can reverse engineer like a vortex motion. If you imagine there's this extra dimension, kind of like with your bathtub, if you pull the bathtub drain, you're gonna have this vortex. We don't really see the water going down that. We don't see the water in the drain, but we know it's going down that drain. And so what they can do is from our three-dimensional reality, they can say, oh, we see this entanglement process. We can reverse engineer the Schrodinger equation and figure out what is that actually doing through the medium, through the extra dimension, which would allow you then to produce entanglement anywhere you want at will. And I think that's essentially where they're at right now, which is essentially manipulating reality.
You're saying they're able to infer the dimensions of the matter that they want to entangle, or
So like we have this. So again, if we're on this flat two-dimensional surface, but we know there's this extra dimension up here, we could see the shape of that extra dimension interacting on our 2D surface. Like it might just look like a circle, right? If it was actually a vortex. But they can look at that and they go, okay, they can assume there's this extra dimension, and they can say, okay, well, based on what the shape we see, we can tell the tilt of the vortex in the extra dimension. And they go, okay, well then all we have to do, once we have our tilt, we can just find out what those vectors are, we can solve for the vectors, and now we can produce an exact opposite interaction that we want.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you create the opposite of the particle to essentially instantiate a
Depending on what you want to do, if you want to produce something out of
entanglement.
nothing, you know exactly what kind of frequency you need to do to produce it. If you want to counteract something, then you could reverse engineer the interaction and counteract that.
In regards to things having to be, you were saying, in order for an entanglement to occur, two photons have to be created at the same spot and then sent apart.
And through the same medium.
And I wonder about the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang they call it, but I see it sort of as like we're in a torus and we're constantly the reason why you see a red shift in the further reaches of space, they think it's getting further away faster so that the wavelength is actually getting longer. But I'm like, well, maybe you're just seeing the wavelength from a different angle. So it looks very short, and then you see it from here, and now all of a sudden that same wavelength, it looks a little more red because it looks, so the universe is bending around and wrapping through this toroidal center, and where everything is coming together and re-entangling and then exploiting out, and now we're all entangled. But that's different than actual entanglement. Apparently, as far as
exactly. So you just mentioned about basically the space-time something. I want to emphasize one thing is when we say something expand, right? The current explanation is space itself is expanding, right? So you said, hey, redshift is not because of things moving away. It's due to space expansion and the drag, everything in it expand. That's a fallacy. Space actually is space itself is not a geometry, which is so that's why we said, space, what they call distort space-time create gravity. So we have another interpretation. So so-called space-time is just electromagnetic field. That's a real thing. And if you so-called distorted, you do not need a distorted. The electromagnetic field can generate attraction, so that's what gravity interaction is all through this electromagnetic field.
It's the same thing. If you think of the universe as a torus, I mean, magnetic fields are toruses, so it just tracks that we are in this rotating magnetic field.
And yeah, if you go to Tim, I don't know if you can pull up slide number, probably the first slide or second slides. So
Number 1.
Probably the one right after that. So the first scientist I found was
he knows the exact location there. So.
Yeah, Robert Forward was the first person that showed that we can actually extract this 0-point energy and turn it into charging a battery, and he found that out in 1984. So a lot of these physicists you'll talk to, they'll go, well, yeah, the 0-point energy is there, but there's no way to extract it, even if you have the plates. But yes, Robert Forward showed that yes, the plates coming together can charge a battery. Now, perpetual extraction, we need something else. That's why they've been building these microchips. If you go to the next slide, Hal Puthoff is the world's leading expert on 0-point energy. And Hal Puthoff is also connected to this UFO topic. He was a CIA guy. He was naval intelligence. He was also a remote viewing guy with SRI, Stanford Research Institute, as well. And Hal Puthoff came up with this paper that says gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. Gravity as a 0-point fluctuation force. That's essentially the same thing that Dr. Yu is saying here. And Hal Puthoff, this was posted in Physical Review, by the way, guys. So this is not a small paper. These are all peer-reviewed scientific papers. And what he says here is that we can actually, from first principles, we can get Einstein's equations for gravity, considering gravity to be this electromagnetic force produced by 0-point energy. So what that would mean is we're in this 0-point energy, then gravity is the ripples in that, the divots. So if I have this huge mass, like a planet, it's going to create this ripple in the 0-point energy. And then the second paper, I just want to address one more, is the ground state of the hydrogen atom. The ground state of the hydrogen atom, this was the first paper that Hal Puthoff wrote, right before his gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. And people wonder, why is this paper so important? Ground state of the hydrogen atom does not radiate energy at rest. And the main takeaway is Hal Puthoff says, every atom is constantly in an exchange of energy between the 0-point energy and our reality out there. It's energy is being released into our reality, and it's being pulled in through the 0-point energy everywhere. Now, this opens the door to, manipulation of the ether, manipulation of matter, potentially, warp drives, wormholes, all of this stuff. And it also opens the door again to extracting that energy for use.
Nassim Harriman has a paper called the Schwarzschild proton, where he's derived that every proton is actually 2 protons revolving around each other at the speed of light around a black hole, or that each one is a black hole revolving around each other. And that also makes sense with what you're saying, that atoms are actually just taking matter and spinning it. That is just these fluctuation points within the. So I mean, I guess it's just a sense of like twisting space-time.
Yeah, I think Nassim Haramein, I think he's accurate. I mean, if anybody can claim to be a 0-point influencer before me, it's probably him, because he's been on this bandwagon for a while. I haven't personally interacted with him. But I think really to take the next level is like, who are the people that have figured this out and who are the ones that were hiding it and what have you? And that's where I'm looking directly at Hal Puthoff. And his right-hand man is Eric W. Davis. This guy's been in these UFO hearings sitting next to Anna Paulina Luna, and they're asking him about how many kinds of aliens exist. And I'm going, have you looked at his scientific papers? Teleportation physics study, traversable wormholes, warp drives. He's the world's leading expert on warp drives and wormholes and negative energy. And people are asking him about how many aliens exist. It's like Eric Davis helped the Air Force figure out working teleportation, and nobody seems to want to ask him about it. Just if you go to slide number, which slide number is this? Slide number 13, teleportation physics study. Eric W. Davis paper. Frank Mead of the Air Force Research Labs is the project manager. He's the project manager on like all these papers. And this paper shows there are different types of teleportation as we would think about them. We're not talking about sci-fi teleportation where we're dematerializing things down and then rebuilding it atom by atom. It's more of a polarizable vacuum model, the VM teleportation, which is essentially electrifying the vacuum because the vacuum is electromagnetic in nature, the zero-point energy is. And that's how we can interact with this zero-point energy. I think that what they're able to do is push that zero-point energy aside, and then we go from our false vacuum to our true vacuum, our true nothingness. And that's where all points in space and time are connected. And that's how you can allow for a type of teleportation event. And last thing is, this would mean too that wormholes and warp drives are the same fundamental physics. The only difference would be how much we're pulling on that zero-point energy. If we pull a little bit on the zero-point energy, it'll pull us forward, according to negative mass theory. If we pull a lot on that zero-point energy, then we create a singularity, where at some point, you just vanish.
I think about teleportation and apparition movement, basically. We look at this three-dimensional reality like we're moving through space, but realistically, we're appearing in place, and then as we think we're moving, we're appearing in place in a new position. We're constantly appearing in a new position. We are teleporting through space. We're more apparating through space. So the idea that we could apparate maybe in a further position than what three-dimensionally is that seems very natural.
We should be thinking more in terms of waves than actual particles, and we shouldn't be thinking of everything as being like a real physical thing. We should be thinking of it more of being like rendered in a specific location, which is weird for us to think about because we think of everything as being physical stuff that we're interacting with. But when you really boil it all down, it all comes back to waves. And so, even light, people say, oh, well, light's a particle. They say Einstein was an absolute genius. General relativity is huge because it means that we're all in our own little bubble and we're all experiencing time at a different rate. It just seems like it's the same because we're all on the earth at the same time. So Einstein was absolutely right about that, but he couldn't be more wrong about the particle, light being a particle. So
You ever see this? Yeah. This is how the video game Horizon Zero Dawn renders as you're playing it. The pyramid is your visual, it's the visual direction that you're looking. And so you can see that the world actually forms as you're about to see it.
Yeah. That's kind of how your body moves through space. You form in the new spot. Your body is the map that is constantly moving.
And this is how I imagine the teleportation is that it's like rendering from one location and re-rendering into a new location, but it's not actually disassembling it. It's just
the reality is we live in a simulation, and the U.S. government just got cheat codes with they're using trainers.
Let's talk
admins
about,
are upset about it.
Let's go into wave particle duality, because when I look at wave particle duality, I think they say is light is photons, particles, rays. I think it's both. I think that what we're looking at is a bunch of beads, and we're seeing the outline of the beads. The two-dimensional outline is the wave. We're seeing the above, but it's actually, it could be, just depends on how you look at it. But I'm open to interpret.
That's the part. That's part of which Ian mentioned so many parts. That's the double slit experiment. Measure, is that light as a wave or particle? So we have that special topic here, and also photoelectric effect. Yep. So, he just say, I believe that's one of the blunder by somebody win Nobel Prize on that one, right? I will explain that. Before that one, I want to emphasize one point. Ian just mentioned about the two black holes, right? Orbiting together. That's something they measure the gravitational wave from interactor orbiting two black holes. Eventually, they are smashed, impact. So I want to emphasize what LIGO That's the facility who measured called the gravitational wave. What they are really measured. What they really measured is so-called gravitational wave is nothing more just electromagnetic wave of the medium, right? That's just a medium. So what they really measured is the medium, is electromagnetic wave. However, they explained. The explanation is a mechanical vibration of space. So, vibration of space that's created this called a mechanical force. Make what is the Earth, what is called fluctuation. That interpretation is not correct.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.